All right, can you hear me? This means yes. Okay, good. We'll be having a Bible chat every time we meet. Bible chat. All right, good. No songbook, just Bible. All right. Y'all probably remember that, huh? I'm really glad to be here. I mean, really glad. The older you get, the less you want to drive. And I'm not that far away. I'm only like close to 90 miles away. And when you want to do some thinking and have a little break from 8 or 9 grandkids and what have you, it's really a nice drive. I'm so glad you had me back. I think it's been 4 or 5 years, 5 or 6 years since I've been here. Y'all still look great. I know how I look, so you don't have to comment on it, but anyway, just really glad to be here. It's probably best I get this out of my system, but I'm not asking for a lot of response. But last night about midnight, we got a call, and my mid-40 nephew, my first cousin's son, was out walking his dog, and they found him dead. Someone found him out there in front of the house and tried CPR, and I'm not in the know about very many details right now because I didn't get to go out and do anything about it last night. But so just remember, you don't have to remember names. His name was David Raymond, and his family in your prayers. And I've talked to several of you since I've been here, and life changes, doesn't it? Life changes. Talking to my brother just now about losing his wife of 70 years, and yet at the same time, we always have good news. We always have gospel. That's the beauty of the gospel, is come what may. God has fixed it for us. It doesn't take away our responsibilities, but our record for responsibilities began in the Garden of Eden, and it went downhill. And God knew that was going to happen. Always remember that God is a God of love, and He doesn't expect you to throw all your common sense out the window when you're listening to Him talk. Sometimes we do that. You notice on TV a lot, we deal with political correctness, Well, you said it, didn't you? Well, no, I didn't say it. Well, here's the quote, and they'll take 4 or 5 words out of somebody's sentence and then run with it, And it's the same way with the Bible sometimes. We'll grab up the Bible and say, well, the Bible says this, and sometimes it doesn't say that, even though you've got your 4 words together. I was driving by a marquee not too long ago. I see them regularly. And one of them said, the wages of sin is death. And I told my wife, I said, that's not true. That's not what that verse says. She said, well, it does say that. I said, no, it doesn't. Here's what it says. The verse says, Romans 6:23, the wages of sin is death, but the gift of God is eternal life through our Lord Jesus Christ. That first phrase leads to the second phrase. That bad news issues into the good news. And so, no, that's not what the verse said. It's just like sometimes when people are dealing with substance abuse, they'll go to Colossians chapter 2, where it says, touch not, taste not, handle not. Sorry, folks, that ain't talking about any kind of substance abuse. It's just the opposite. That's talking about the old Gnostic thing of punishing the body to get closer to God, which brings about all kinds of things in people's lives, like trying to pay for their own sins and stuff like that. I couldn't find my list of what I preached here 6 years ago. Seriously, I keep lists, and I couldn't find it, and I'm thinking to myself, what did I do, what did I not do? Not that you would remember it, but sometimes lessons get taped and so forth, and but I do know I want to use our Bible class very quickly just to say some things building up to our meeting. And gospel meetings are different these days. They originated with a great need. Well, the need for which they originated has subsided quite a bit. Don't misunderstand that. The need for the gospel hasn't subsided. But used to, gospel meetings were the only times in 3 or 4 months or even a year people would get to hear the gospel. And so they would gather and have these meetings 2 or 3 weeks, and then that would be it for a lot of people that couldn't hook up the team and the wagon and go 10 miles to church every Sunday. And things were a lot different then. And now we still have gospel meetings, but it's not like it's the gospel being preached first time. You've got a man here and other people who basically, if you want to say it that way, preach the gospel every time the door is open. And it's convenient, to be here. So oftentimes I look at it as a great edification tool as well as presenting the gospel. And you've been here 19 years, Dan, or 20? Which one? Be 20 at the end of this year. Be 20 at the end of this year. Now you see, this gives him, that bad call. You've been gone 2 or 3 weeks, haven't you? I thought I'd say this gives him a break. You don't need no break, do you? Anyway, well, I'm gone theoretically 7 Sundays a year, but I never get to use them all. But anyway, and they don't roll over, by the way. But what I was going to say is, if you hear the same man Sunday in and Sunday out, you need to hear somebody else once in a while. That didn't come out right, and that didn't come out right. Okay, but like, I love it when somebody preaches for me. I'm like, do it again, because they need to be freshened up. Anyhow, turn to Romans 13 very quickly. Now, if we were, however many years I was here before, I know we had to mention this, but it seems to me like it's more needed now than then, not because of sin being worse, but simply because of the not the badness of it, but the quantity of it. People say, well, there's nothing new under the sun. Solomon said that, and that's really true. But one thing that is new is there's more people. And so while the badness, or may I use the word bad quality of sin is the same, and things in the world are the same, the quantity is different, and there's a lot more influence. And you look around our world, and you can't address every problem, but when you're in the scriptures will address things. And the one thing we've got to believe is in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus, and how that is good news, and the worse it gets out there, the better that news gets. You see, good news implies a bad situation. If I tell you I feel better today and don't say anymore, you might get the idea I didn't feel so good yesterday, and that's what gospel is. Well, the world around us right now, a lot is happening. Now, I try to adjust my thinking on it based on, I'm getting older and the news means more to me and less of maybe something else on TV would, but I'm getting to where I take all this in, have been for years, and it gets scary sometimes, because somewhere, now I don't mean this literally, but somewhere there's a button or a plug that can pretty well turn the lights out in the whole town. I don't mean that literally, but not too long ago, we didn't have any phone service for several hours. You might have experienced that too. Several months ago, you couldn't use a credit card. You couldn't do anything for like 4 or 5 hours. Nothing could be done, hardly. And then this guy comes up to me and he says, well, I saw a thing on TV, and here we go, And he said that he saw a show that said it would take us 7 days to start killing each other if everything got unplugged. Try to think of it as one plug. That's what we're always afraid of, right? One big plug. If somebody ever gets a hold of that, and it just showed what would happen if you had no water, if you had no food, if you had no gas, if you had no law enforcement, because all these things, would start crumbling. It's like watching one of these Walking Dead movies or something, zombies and all that. At least we have an idea, of what it would be like if those things were walking up and down the street. But anyway, I've been talking to the kids. You have to go where their brains are and talk to them. But and so that was a little bit sobering. Some Sundays I'll ask the congregation where I preach, Greenwood Park, I'll say, everybody, please do this with me. And they'll do it, and we'll hold our breath. I'll say at the count of 3, hold your breath, and I'll tell you when to turn loose or chuck it in, whichever end you're on, okay, And everybody will do it. And it just changes everything. It shows how tough we are. We ain't tough. I mean, we can't do without the air for very long. There's statistics on how many minutes. Don't even use the word minutes with me. Use the word seconds, okay? That's better. And you realize, it's the same way with your body needing water, your body needing food, needing heat, needing the cold. And I try to share these things when we're having, and when I can help, people with depression or anything like that, is in a different time and place. Sometimes we wouldn't have time to become so introverted because we'd be cold or we'd be hot. Some of you may remember chopping wood or milking the cows, feeding the chickens, slopping the hogs, or something that really related directly to food and mouth. Now we do something, we get some paper things called money, we take them to the bank, and then we get some more paper things back called money, and then we take it into the store and we trade that and we get food, and we don't have to go to the source. Everything moves on, see? And God can interrupt that in a zillionth of a second. See? Can he? Can he do that? Okay, notice he doesn't. Notice that most of our lives we've made it. We're here. Okay? And so you see, it takes a little bit of an itemization sometimes to count your blessings, name them one by one. It takes a little bit of that. Romans 13, let's connect this. Just verse 1. I just want you to see verse 1. Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities. Now that's not what my discussion is about, okay? You do that as far as you can. For there is no authority. Here's my discussion. For there is no authority. There is no authority except that which God has established. Now, in case we didn't get that line, read the last line of verse 1. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Okay? Now notice, there's 3 things in that verse. Now, the Bible wasn't written in chapters and verses. A monk did that about 1,000 years after Christ, okay? Now, I know if we'd have been there, we'd have been mad about that and the whole 9 yards, but we missed it, so we're fine with it. Okay? Just like we're born into a lot of things that we're fine with, including creedism. Okay? Anyway, and so notice what he says in verse 1. He says, there's no authority except at which God has established. And in case we're scratching our heads and wondering what that, look at the third line in verse 1. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Okay, now, do you remember when Jesus was being tried by Pilate? In John 19, in that context of verse 11, Pilate, Jesus won't talk. He won't answer him. And doesn't that just kill you? I mean, I just want Jesus to say, "Brother, you're going down," but Jesus doesn't talk, because he's going to be the sacrifice. He's described as the sheep. He didn't open his mouth. He didn't revile. He didn't do all the things back. And so finally Pilate says, listen, do you not know that I have power to, hand you over to them? I have power to kill you or keep you alive. Well, notice, Jesus did reply to that. He makes a few replies. And the reply he did to that was, he said, you have no authority but that which is given to you from above. Now here's where our problem is. We don't have a problem saying, God's in charge. Yes, he's big. Yes, we're going to give him glory. But when it comes to really taking that truism and connecting it to our emotions, there's something missing there to fit it together. See, there's something missing, and I think sometimes it's faith which comes by hearing the Word of God. Because when you start looking at the negative things and the things you totally disagree with because of biblical conviction, you want God in your mind to be off playing cosmic golf somewhere, but you sure don't want to think that he would let this go on at minimum, or even cause it. See, it doesn't matter if God lets or God causes. God takes responsibility. I didn't say blame, I didn't say fault, but he takes responsibility. And we grapple with that, folks. God takes responsibility for human suffering. He takes responsibility for it. Let me show you. God made this thing called creation that he knew was going to mess up. Okay? And he had a plan. We talked about this before. That he planned before the world began. Before he ever said, let there be light, he had already said, let there be a cross. Text is full of it. Now, in his own word, he said, it had been better had that man not been born. What does that mean? It'd been better had that man not been born. Now there's God in his own words saying, it'd been better had this man not been born. Even Job. Job's like, why couldn't my mother have miscarried me? I mean, why am I going through all this? So you see, if we don't work things out a little bit in our minds, we're always confused about the evil and the wrong in the world, because God is good, mighty, and holy, and we trust him for our salvation. But do we trust him that he knows what he's doing with all the atrocities and death and pain that has happened in the world since the dawn of time? You see that? I mean, think about it. And some of us kind of grew up this way. Some of us grew up thinking 99.99% of all people were going to endure eternal torture. That's a nice way of saying hell, I guess, but eternal torture. Okay? Now, my question to you is, why would a God of love, I mean, you would put a dog down, wouldn't you? Wouldn't you put a dog down, suffering? Well, yeah, we even pay for it. Yeah, used to. We took them out behind the barn and kissed them bye, but anyway, you would put a dog down. Now, this is not about a doctrine of hell and this and that, nothing new. But the point is God knows what he's doing, and we do not know any more than he tells us. And so in that case, we don't need to worry any more than he tells us. See, he knows what's going on in these other countries. He knows who's in power. And it's just like when my first wife got killed. By the way, I'm sorry Sally couldn't be here. She's my second wife, okay? My first wife killed in a car wreck. You knew that after 30 years. Sally's a 39-year nurse, and today is her call day, okay? She only has it once a month, and she, what do they call her? Something new. She's not a manager. It begins with a P. No, it begins with a D. She's a director. Okay? Go Sally. Anyway, and she couldn't be here. But when my first wife, 16 years ago, had a car wreck and got killed, I had to grapple with, God, did he know this was going to happen? Yes. Could he have stopped it? Yes. Did he stop it? No. See? Now, you've been through all that in your life, but sometimes you have to get insultingly simple with yourself. You have to keep things real simple. You have to for me, but sometimes you need to do it yourself too. And so God knew God could have stopped, but God didn't. Now, you know what Job would say to that. Blessed be the name of the Lord. The Lord gave, there's mountaintop. The Lord took away, there's the valley. Where's God? Where's God? Where's God? Why is this happening? Where's God? You see, when God has made it plain to us, he gives and he takes away, and he has a reason for that. And Father alone will know all about it if he wants us to know it. And so whatever's going on in this world, God is on top of it. Now, if he knows the number of hairs on your head, Matthew 10, a sparrow that falls to the ground, then, as we sing in the song, yes, he knows all about our struggles. And so sometimes there's that fine line between saying, yes, God's in control, and then you're over here like, well, what is this, though? Lord, and that's what David did. In the Psalm, David said, Lord, will you please look at me? Stop being mad at me because of my sins. I envied the way the guy was close to God. He was so intimate with God, and he was a man after God's own heart. But even when he would bring things on himself, he'd be like, and sometimes we tell our kids, you make your bed, you sleep in it. Have you slept in every bed you've made? Well, think about it. I bet you haven't. I bet you haven't slept in every bed you've made. Point is we need to tell our kids more than you're going to heaven, you're going to heaven, you're going to heaven. God didn't leave them here to get muddy and dirty again after they come out of the baptistry and go to hell. He leaves them here for a reason and a purpose, just like he's done us, and he helps us here. He helps us here. Hebrews chapter 9, verse 15 says, we don't have a high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our weaknesses or who can sympathize with us. We don't have that because he was tempted in all points like we are, yet without sin. Now the very next verse, verse 16, says, let us therefore come with confidence or boldness to the throne of grace to find grace and mercy in the time of need, and that's the need of here and now. And it's hard. It's hard sometimes to put it all together for our children because we want them to do better than we did that we don't want to talk about, or whatever. And it turns out to where whether we like it or not, we're saying to them, don't sin, don't sin, don't sin. And that didn't work on you. Did it? Did it? Any sinless people here? Okay, so really what we need to tell them is the truth, and in this case it'd be 1 John 2, 1 and 2. My little children, these things I write that you do not sin. And if any man sins, we have an advocate with the Father. Oh, don't tell them that, Brother Mike. They'll think they can sin and get forgiveness. Duh. Well, yeah, but I mean, you have to have godly sorrow and repentance. Of course you do, as much as you've done well in that area too, right? See, what I'm getting at here is in the world events, God is everywhere, knows everything. And we need to take comfort in that. But if we can't take comfort in the aspect that he left us here for a reason, I mean, if you follow some of my principles that I have preached, I'll be your guinea pig, okay? If you follow some of that, then God did me wrong by not taking me from the baptistry. Think about it. Now look what I'm into. Why couldn't you have just beamed me up right then? See? In other words, we sometimes make God a bad teacher because what we all get split up, but we don't understand. God just couldn't teach, could he? We just all really have several views on this thing. And of course, it's always my view that's right and yours that's wrong. And that doesn't always mean I'm heaven bound and you're hell bound, but if you disagree with somebody, look out, right? Well, he's into it all. He's into it all. Our young people face, our young people, they face frontiers. And that makes them pioneers. They face the frontiers of new things. See, as they gain their freedom and make choices, just like we did. And so, one of the things I was taught as a kid, and this was given to me as I was growing up in Romanism, but it stuck. And that was, tell God everything because he knows it anyway. Tell him everything. Now, I'm not going to tell you everything. I'm not giving you my dirty laundry unless you see it already or something, But God's already seen it. I can't give you what goes across this screen right here, see? And you don't want me to see what goes across your screen. Sometimes that thing runs automatic, doesn't it? And get out of my head. And so running to him with everything. Everything. I said everything. think I have a mixed class, so I feel a little hindered to say some things, but there's nothing he doesn't know about us. There's nothing he doesn't know about our enemies. But how much time do I have here, bro?
About 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes. Okay, turn to Isaiah 5 real quick. Just trying to set a little bit of stage because it's text. Isaiah 5, everybody have it? Okay, two passages, one here and one as we move on just a little bit. But in Isaiah chapter 5, come down here if you will, and let me see in verse 8 all the woes, woe, you know. Come down if you will and look at verse look at verse 20. Now, this is right in the middle of a context. I tell you what, if you want to back up and look, if you will, at verse 8. Verse 8. Now this is what brought Israel's end, okay? And the thing we're going to develop here, not just in this lesson, and I want you to come back for more of it, I don't know exactly when we'll do the rest, is develop how that God is in everything and he's always been doing the same thing. You know, for some reason when the book of Revelation ends, God just stops. You know, he's given us this whole book from Genesis through Revelation, and we have to realize he gave us a blueprint of who he is, and he's L-O-V-E, and he just keeps doing what you've been reading about. For example, look down in Isaiah chapter 5, look at verse 8. Woe to you who add house to house and join field to field till there's no space left and you live alone in the land. This has to do with the lack of care for other people, okay? This is not making the farm bigger or something like that. Look at verse 9. The Lord Almighty declared in my hearing, surely the great house will become desolate, fine mansions without occupants. This is what happens when they live without any clue of what's going on around them. A 10-acre vineyard will only produce a little bit of wine and seed and so forth. Look at verse 11. Woe to you who rise early in the morning to run after their drinks, who stay up late at night till they're inflamed with wine. Verse 12. They have harps, lyres at their banquets, tambourines, flutes, and wine, but they have no regard for the deeds of the Lord, no respect for the work of his hands. And he said, well, yeah, okay, let's start at the count of 3. Regard God for the work of his hands. God, we regard you. Let's start at the count of 3. Respect God for what he did. No, that has to be in the book. Now, what's verse 13? Therefore, my people will go into exile for lack of understanding. And, you know, I've always defended people that way, but hey, stop. He doesn't understand. On vacation this past year, someone didn't understand something, and I kind of jumped in the middle, and I said, no, he doesn't understand what you're saying. And this guy's, you know, you're in my face to this other guy. I'm like, no, he doesn't understand what you're saying, because I knew he didn't understand. Okay? He doesn't understand. Well, verse 13, sometimes we're responsible for what we understand and don't understand. See? They're going into exile because of their lack of understanding. We're responsible for what we understand and what we don't understand. That doesn't mean you have to go out and get a degree in Bible or something, but, you know, just try reading over and over and over. And so come all the way down, if you will, and look at verse 20. Okay? Verse 20. Verse 20. Woe to those who call evil good and good evil. See, those things happen, all right? There's nothing new here. Who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Verse 21, woe to those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Woe to those who are heroes. Man, they must have a real drinking problem here or something. It's coming up again. Look at this. in verse 20. Woe to those who are heroes at drinking wine, champions at mixed drinks. You thought cocktails were new. Anyway, and verse 24, therefore as the flames lick up straw. Now listen, this is not about drinking, okay? There's a lot of it here. The Bible condemns drunkenness, go there, but the point is God is being left out. Now, very quickly, chapter 10. Chapter 10. And so here's what God does to fix these problems that's part of the big plan for you. He amputates. And he shows us that in surgery all the time, doesn't he? He amputates. I've got written. Can anybody see that patch in my shirt? Can you see a patch right there? You can. Now can you see it? No? Well, this is 10 stitches, and the one over here is 9 stitches. Dermatology. Okay. I mean, I love them, but they're skinny. That's all there is to it. I love them, I pay them, but they're skinny, okay? But what they did to me, and there's one right here, I forgot to put a Band-Aid on, is they amputated some of my hide off of me, okay? And the reason they amputated some of my hide off of me was because it didn't fit the plan of the body. I asked them what caused it, and they said, that's so nice, a lifetime in the sun. A lifetime in the sun. I mean, I'm doomed around the clock. First thing that comes off when I get home is my shirt. You know, in the house, the light bulbs are burning me up. Anyway, and so here's what happens. Look at verse 5. Woe to the Assyrian. Now, the Assyrian were the people in power that finally took the northern kingdom out in 722 BC, so forth. They're the ones that invented the crucifixion. They're responsible for that way of killing somebody, not letting them die for all these hours. Very, very bad news people. Now, what's what God says about the Assyrian? Look, woe to the Assyrian. Who is he? The rod of my anger. Isaiah 10:5, 10:5. In whose hand is the club of my wrath. Okay, now here he's saying, this nation is my weapon. All right, now watch. Look at verse 6. I send him. Now the him there is representing the whole country or the king. I send him against a godless nation. I dispatch him against the people who anger me. I send him. I dispatch him. God dispatches armies, bad armies. He does that. Yeah, look, watch what it says here in the latter part of verse 6. Isaiah 10:6. 6. To seize, loot, to snatch plunder, to trample them down like mud in the streets. But look at the Assyrian, verse 7. But this is not what he intends. Oh, no, he's not doing God's will. This is not what he has in mind, verse 7. It's his purpose to destroy, to put an end to many nations. Okay, now, if you go on from here, 10 times in the next several chapters, God shows him bringing down a city or a nation. Okay? Now, he doesn't do that as punishment only. He does that to keep carrying out his plan for me and you. Haven't you ever wondered what would have happened had, and then you list things in your life? What would have happened if Hitler had made it over here? I don't know. What would have happened if, what would have happened if during the Cold War, which is heating up again, what would have happened if the certain buttons were pushed? You think about that. Well, see, God knows all that. Me and you wonder what would happen if God knows. And so he goes around amputating that which will thwart his plan. Now, you and I get concerned about who he's amputating because sometimes we're the amputee, in our nation. Now, that hasn't really happened to us yet in the way it's happened in history. I'm not a prophet of doom, but at the way you count numbers and everything, it is true, unless something interferes. Missionaries from Africa one day will be coming here to tell us about Jesus. You know, that's kind of the way that is. And one more thing about that is, in the Islamic religion, the word is, I have a chart on this, I may give it to you, is they raise 8 kids and they don't lose any of them. I don't know how they got these figures, but we raised 1.5. You know, got up to half, okay? Anyway, we raised 1.5 kids. They raise 8. They keep all theirs. We lose half of ours. 3/4, I don't know. Anyway, and so all you have to do is put the math to it, and then they show which nation gets dominated first. Fascinating. And you see, there's no real, and I'm all for protection. You know, I'm Rambo, okay? Don't mistake me, all right? But there's not enough bullets to kill everybody who opposes you. Eventually, their thinking has to be changed. Eventually. See? Eventually. I know my time's up, but I'm hoping to continue this one night, and I don't know which one that's going to be, okay?